you happen to be far away from North America. I'm Phil Rubin, founder of Gray Space Matters, and coming to you live today with Allison Ferguson from Honda and Len Llaguno from Kyros Insights. And as the chair of Loyalty Summit CXM, which is happening next month in Los Angeles at the lovely Beverly Hilton, we set up today to just have a little discussion, to share some insights into what's going to be happening in LA next month. Obviously, with the intent that we're hoping that those of you watching live or watching this recorded are going to want to join us. So just to quickly introduce myself and give you guys a quick overview of what the intent is for LA. I've been in and around loyalty marketing on the client side, the consulting side, had my own firm, Our Dialogue. Have been fortunate enough to work with dozens of leading global brands over the course of my career, have been obsessed and in love with this kind of customer-centric work to build businesses, and really privileged to chair this event, mainly because what we've been able to do is create a conference that's a little bit different than everything else going on in the industry, and more importantly, address what a lot of us believe are some of the critical issues facing not just loyalty, not just marketing, but really business as we move forward post-pandemic and post-cookies and really post-easy growth. And we're absolutely in that period. So we've themed the event around what we believe is the coming renaissance of loyalty, which reflects the fact that a lot of us view loyalty as being stuck. There's too much of the sameness still happening, even though this is not a new industry. This is a mature industry. Loyalty, modern loyalty marketing started in 1979. And we're fortunate that we've got people like Allison and Len and dozens of others that are going to come out to LA and address this theme across 5 different tracks. The business of loyalty, the art of loyalty, which is really the role of the brand, enabling technologies, reducing friction, especially in a world with a lot of intermediaries and partners, and the last track being focused on payments and co-brand credit cards, because that's a huge unlock. So today I want to introduce Allison Ferguson from Honda and Len from Kyros, because they are both going to be in what I expect to be incredible sessions in LA, but they're both people that have been in this business for a long time, have points of view, have a real unique angle that they approach this through in terms of a lens. I'll let them out 10 more seconds. Allison's got this wonderful view that is grounded. When I first met her, she was doing analytics and insights in the telecom world. And Len, of course, his work speaks directly to one of my passions, which is finance and the intersection of finance, customers, and business growth and business valuation. So with that, let me turn it over to Allison first to give a brief introduction, and then we'll hear from Len, and then we'll just talk for a little bit while we're here live.
Allison? Oh, thanks, Phil, and so good to commune with you and Len, who of course I've known for years. Allison Ferguson and I lead enterprise loyalty. Very proud recently with Honda Motors. Before that, quite a bit of time with Accenture, Merkle, and Epsilon in the loyalty consulting space, and before that, leading Hotels of the World and IHG on the client side. So spanned a lot of industries, and had about a 25-year journey in loyalty to earn this terrific new blank canvas opportunity at one of the world's top 30 global brands. So very excited to share what I can about our thinking and how it's meant to unstick loyalty from traditional thinking and boundaries.
That's great, Allie. Thanks. Len?
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Phil. So I'm Len Llaguno. I'm the founder and managing partner here at Kyros. We are a bit of a unique player in the loyalty space. We are a boutique actuarial firm. And for those of you that don't know what an actuary is, actuaries are typically the people working for insurance companies, building the models to predict how long you're going to live, right? Which obviously is pretty critical if you're trying to price an insurance policy, as an example. We do not work with insurance companies. We somehow found ourselves working with loyalty programs. I personally have been doing this for over 15 years. As far as I'm aware, we're the only actuarial firm in the world that is solely focused on loyalty programs. So there's, other actuaries that dabble here. They're primarily insurance actuaries who just, dabble with loyalty programs. So, loyalty is all we do at Kyros. And there's really two ways we support loyalty programs. One is helping them sort of just manage loyalty program liabilities. These are the liabilities you have to book on your balance sheet for all the points that you have outstanding that will eventually get redeemed in the future. We help do sort of all the analytics to support that. And then the other half of our business is analytics to support and understand customer lifetime value, how to quantify it and how to optimize it. Yeah. And so those are the two areas that we focus on. Excited to be here, Phil, to sort of just chop it up with you guys and see where the conversation goes.
That's great. Thanks, Len. Thanks, Allie. Let's start with now the first track of the event is really about the business of loyalty and getting loyalty into the C-suite. And I think given both of your backgrounds and the focus of your work, I think we can all sort of appreciate both the opportunity, but also the challenges that we need to meet to indeed elevate loyalty to the C-suite, because there are companies out there where loyalty is talked about at the board level and at the C level, but there's still a majority, I would say, of companies out there where loyalty is relegated to, no offense to some people out there who might be listening, to middle marketing managers versus really being owned by somebody who's got a seat at the table with the CEO and ultimately with the board. And I think you guys both bring an analytics background. You guys both have experience, both kind of ex ante and ex post, in looking at the economics of loyalty. And I think we're really fortunate that we're going to have people like Professor Peter Fader from Wharton, which is obviously a finance school with a really strong marketing orientation that intersects, and his work ties directly to some of your work, Len. So maybe we start there in terms of the correlation that it seems so obvious that it is such a blind spot for so many, that customers are the key to growth and creating incremental financial value for stakeholders, right? And what is it do you think, is it as simple as like too many marketing people can't do math? or is it sort of that intersection of marketing and finance that's, especially in a data-rich world that we're in, that just seems like it doesn't have enough traffic at that intersection?
Yeah, I don't know the root cause why it's not. I agree. It seems sort of obvious. Companies are valued on how much profit they're going to generate in the future, right? That's fundamentally sort of what you learn in Finance 101 when you're trying to value a company. It's high level, how much profit are they going to generate in the future, right? And then, of course, there's a lot of nuance to that, but keeping it pretty high level. Then you got to ask yourself, where does the profit come from? It comes from customers, right? And so if we can make our customers generate more profit in the future through coming back again and again and again, then the enterprise gets more valuable, right? And who's in charge of getting the customers to keep coming back again and again and again? Loyalty program managers, right? Like, it's right in the description of the job, loyalty, right? And so there is absolutely a direct connection between loyalty programs and enterprise value creation. Like, we all agree, but I know for a fact that is not sort of common knowledge, even in the C-suite. I think if you explained it, people would be like, I see that connection. But that's not an agenda item, a sort of ongoing agenda item in the C-suite as it stands today. And I think, I am so excited to be at this conference with Pete Fader. I mean, I can't believe you guys got Professor Pete Fader to come. He is the godfather of thinking about these concepts, and a lot of it's just tied to this idea of customer lifetime value, right? and that representing how much profit a customer is going to generate in the future. And then you sort of aggregate that up, and you can actually derive the value of the enterprise from that. He has been talking about this literally for decades, and it still has not become, as intuitive as it is, it still has not become sort of common knowledge and the way we do things, the status quo. So there's a journey that we have to go on to sort of make this a bigger concept, more understood concept. But I think we're there. Even just in the past, let's say 5-6 years since I started the company, we would talk a lot about customer lifetime value. And at the beginning, people would just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what is this concept? Or maybe they had some understanding of it, but it really wasn't a critical metric that they were concerned with. Today, when you go to companies and talk about customer lifetime value, there's more recognition of it and the value of it and the importance of it, right? They may not necessarily be doing it to the nth degree today, but I've definitely seen some progress there. So I think it's an exciting time as we think about where we go in the future. I think these ideas of customer lifetime value, leveraging the data to be able to quantify that, will be a big part of that in the years to come. Allison, I'm curious about you, like what you've seen with respect to these metrics and the use at all in your experience.
Yeah, thanks. I think, to sort of start with Phil's question about the dialogue at the C-suite, I think we're lucky at Honda that we all have access to Kyros, our generous leader, and he's very interested in these topics. So I think they're hard to translate is when we don't tie our loyalty objectives to both the business realities and the assets of the organization. And we say instead, we have to do a credit card because Ford's doing a credit card, for example, which doesn't really address the fundamental issues of transitioning people from to electric vehicles, to the shortage of supply in automobiles requiring return of vehicles within our ecosystem, and strengthening the trust and frequency of our dealer relationships. That really is what the business cares about. So the way to get loyalty into the C-suite and the approach that I'm seeking to take is to align loyalty to those business objectives and the customer pain points, and not take, with respect to my competition, the easy way out of a points-based system that may or may not align to our business model. So I think unless you really immerse and understand what the executives are talking about for the company's existential future and tying the way that loyalty works in the company to the unique assets of the organization, like a dealer interaction with an Acura dealer, how to make that something special, for example, then the mismatch is you have a tactical marketing program that's competing with all the other channels, if you will, versus a strategic initiative that's really aimed at the highest level of business priority. So I think that mismatch is one of the potential reasons that it's not in the dialogue with the C-suite.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Yeah, these annual surveys come out and they talk about kind of C-level strategic priorities for the next fiscal year. And you see all these things in these list of priorities, and it's I don't know what the percentages are, but it seems often conspicuously absent that the customer is in one of the, in the top three or even the top five business priorities. It's sort of crazy. I mean, it goes back to like Drucker saying the purpose of a business is to create a customer, right? And then everybody just, I don't know, that's a good line, but what does it mean? And it doesn't translate. A lot of the things you talked about just now, Allison, I think are really interesting because they actually go away from some of the financial specifics. And I think this is what we're trying to do in LA, is really speak to loyalty is art and it's science. Mm-hmm. It's very scientific in the work that like to lend to your, like that you do and that Pete and his partner Dan McCarthy do at Theta, and obviously a lot of their academic work tying customer value to enterprise value. Mm-hmm. But there's also this whole notion, because the realities of Honda's business, for example, is very different than Ford's business. And they're called Honda and Ford for a reason, right? And they have different brand orientations and different levels, different brand assets. But that gets more into the art in the sense of, and you spoke to it, Allison, like the notion of brand trust, especially in a world where there are all these dynamics, not, between distribution and supply chain. And these are real operational things that loyalty strategy can be used to address.
Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, it's topical, and this, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about this, but having lived in Atlanta for most of the last 30 years and flying Delta, and while this isn't going to be a conference just focused on travel, always looked at Delta as really a leader, not just for the airlines, but more broadly, because their loyalty strategy was so tied to their enterprise business strategy. And of course, the changes that they announced last month and the walk back of some of that, which was really sort of on the margins for the most part last week, tells you a lot about this idea that loyalty is stuck. And you said it, Allison. It's not. There is a whole world of strategies designed to drive loyalty that have nothing to do with points or programs, which is really the brand. And I think what we see with Delta is the reality. And this will also tie to some of what you do, Len, in terms of being able to model liability and return is like never, at least to my knowledge, never in the history of loyalty has a loyalty point, mile, or other loyalty currency done anything other than degrade in value.
Yeah.
Which, like, if those things aren't evidence that loyalty is really stuck, and is sort of demanding new, there's such an opportunity for innovation. What's your sense? Is it just a matter of getting more people to appreciate and understand this, or is it going to take more and more brand leaders moving away from traditional programs, and then of course everybody else following them, because that's the nature of leaders and followers? You guys want to weigh in on that, or have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I'll go here quick, Allison, if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah, my thought here, and I love how you frame that, Phil. Like, there's an art to loyalty, and there's like a science. And I will be completely honest with you and the whole lot. It's like I'm hard on the arts, on the science side, right? Like I'm an actuary, I'm a numbers guy, right? And I'm all about the analytics. I think one of the challenges here, and I also appreciate the importance of both sides, though. I think the best outcomes happen at the intersection of both. It's an and, not an or. You can't do one without the other, right? But my job is to contribute to rounding out the science side of it. So my take on this is, I see it all the time when we're working with loyalty programs. Most of the time, with all of our clients, we help them with the liability, right? So we're meeting with the CFO, we're meeting with executives to talk about what's the liability we're putting on the balance sheet, right? And we have to quantify that because the accounting regulations require you to do so. So it's always quantified. The liability is just a cost concept, right? So if all you're showing people are your costs and how much these things are gonna cost you, and you're doing that every single month or every single quarter, what mindset are they going to be in? They're going to be in the mindset of loyalty as a cost center, right? And I think that's problematic. We all know it's not. We all know that it's investment in our customers, right? And it provides a positive ROI. But there's no regulation that says you need to quantify both sides of that equation, the cost and the benefit. The only regulation is quantify the cost. You're sort of stuck, right? And because, human nature is human nature, like we're going to kind of do the easiest thing, or at least most people are, right? Sort of at the big level, right? The macro level. Unless there's like somebody forcing us to quantify customer lifetime value and bring that up into the organization so that when I'm talking about liability, I'm also talking about customer lifetime value to give you the net picture, the net economic picture. Then and only then are we going to be able to change the perspective internally of loyalty being enterprise value generator as opposed to a cost center, right? So that's sort of my perspective on it, based off of sort of that sort of odd finance angle that I take to loyalty. Allison, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think when a couple reasons why, just to basically answer my thoughts on loyalty being stuck. One, I think, is pretty basic in that the technology has been traditionally quite monolithic, and the way that programs have been constructed are as separate brands within the company, separate websites within the company, and a technology that has its own member sort of attribute CDP / CRM and points bank and all of that. And it's, instead of the more modern kind of headless technologies that allow us to use our brand agencies and use our Salesforce or Adobe suites and use our CDP and really think about how we orchestrate value to the customer as our loyalty program that's inherent and organic to the business. I think certain brands have done that well. Potentially, you would think of Spotify or Nike. And if we could create a great activation experience for where the receiver is the loyal customer and the channel is the digital channel or the in real life experience, and we're helping brands to shift their thinking, and where all the money is, frankly, in any large organization is with the brand team, shifting their mindset and resources towards this way of thinking. And then we're orchestrated in our approach instead of competing in our approach and being kind of this separate capability. So I think as we think about getting loyalty unstuck, it's really liberating the assets and the technology that's throughout the entire organization orchestrated towards customer value, instead of building separate, more monolithic ideas and structures. So that's my path to unstuck that I had a revelation about, that I'm hoping to put forth in my future.
I love that, Allison, because it ties directly back to the idea that, well, in the definition of one definition of marketing, not the definition of marketing, but where marketing is defined as putting scarce resources at risk in the marketplace to drive customers' revenue and market share, right? Because and what is loyalty but a more refined reallocation of those resources against the customers with the highest potential value, right? But that just those things that the three of us can violently agree on. This kind of goes back to, and no, I mean, I made a career in marketing, but marketers don't get finance, and finance doesn't get marketing.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to convince the CEO of something, who does she or he turn to on their executive team to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? What voice has the most resonance with the CEO? It ain't the CMO, it's the CFO, right?
Yeah, key stakeholder for sure.
Yeah. This is where, just to go back to do a little soft promotion or hard promotion on the event, I think this could be the first loyalty marketing customer experience event that has a Goldman Sachs investment banker joining us. So I think between, Pete, Joe Ryan from Goldman, you, Len, and obviously Allison, and what we're all going to talk about, we ought to be able to get there. We've got to wrap up in a couple minutes, but I'd like to just ask you guys, what are you most, I don't know if you've thought about this, what are you most looking forward to in LA, and how would you categorize it? Is it inspiration, education, networking, hearing different perspectives? What do you think?
Why don't you go, Allison? I went first last time.
Yeah, I'd say all of those. And, what I've understood about Loyalty Summit is really the experience of the attendee at the senior level, and as I'm seeking to lead on the client side, having the dialogue and an open, transparent feedback loop to discuss these ideas and the hurdles to achieving them, because as I've already found, the strategy is somewhat the easy part, in the sense that it's sort of two-dimensional, but the execution and the funding and the roadmap and selling in the ideas, I think, for transformative thinking and not the typical thinking, is what I'm looking to my community to help advise on. And then, just the spirit of celebrating such the longevity and success of our industry in general is always good fun.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'd say fun is probably number one for me. Whenever I go to these events, it's always a great time, and I think a lot of the attendees will also really enjoy. There's just great group of people here to catch up with, to learn from, to go have some drinks with, and just enjoy. I think that's definitely going to be great. I personally, I mentioned it earlier, I'm very excited to listen to Pete talk, Professor Pete Frater from Wharton. I mean, I think his perspective is going to be so interesting and almost sort of adjacent to the regular topics you get at a loyalty conference, because while he's a marketing professor, he's one of those few people, Phil, that really understands both sides. He's a professor of marketing at Wharton, but he's made a career out of basically finding the intersection between finance and marketing.
Yeah.
And what he does at Theta, it was in sort of really incredible intersection of those two things, where they're using that sort of intersection of areas of expertise to help private equity firms do valuations on businesses, right? And so I think there'll be just a tremendous amount that I and a lot of the audience will just learn from what he has to say. And we have him for, I think, Phil, you've got him lined up for a keynote chat, and then also a panel as well as that.
Yeah. Pete's going to do a hybrid keynote, which would be about, like 15, 20 minutes, and then a panel discussion with you, with Joe Ryan and a couple of others. It's going to be great. I think you guys both sort of referenced how great a community we get to work in. The clients, and I will also say some of the best clients I've ever worked with have been students of Peter's from Wharton, and also Dan McCarthy's from Emory. I hired a bunch of people who were Dan's students, and I've been fortunate enough to go in and lecture and do some live cases there. They're top notch. But I'm struck by, and Len, you and I were both in Chicago. When was that? June, maybe.
Yeah.
It was
DC, wasn't it?
Sorry. Yes, DC. It's in Chicago next year, and it was in Chicago the year before. In DC for the travel-focused Loyalty Summit. We're not focusing on one particular industry, but I met somebody there who was new to the industry, and had a conversation with her. And what her big takeaway was how connected and how aligned so many people in the industry are, and what a great community it was, and how welcoming we all were to her being completely new. So I think that's another facet of this, to underscoring the fun. Like this, we're lucky enough that we get to do this kind of work, and it is super fun.
Yeah.
So I think with that, it's probably a good point to wrap up. We're coming right up on 30 minutes after the hour. Excited to see you both in a few weeks. Excited to hear what you guys are going to talk about and be part of these conversations. Thanks in advance, and thanks again, not just for today, but for committing to coming out to LA.
Yeah, my pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having us, Phil. Still live?